Alright, so today we're going to talk about multiplying and dividing rational expressions. So a rational expression, we learned about what those are yesterday. So we're going to talk about how we can multiply and divide them. Okay? So there's a few different ways we can do it, and we have something called cross-canceling. Okay? So if you have the product of these two rational expressions, you factor the top and the bottom, like so. You can actually do something called cross-canceling, because technically this is in the numerator, this is in the denominator. When you multiply two fractions together, you essentially multiply the tops and the bottoms, which means you can cancel things diagonally before you combine the fractions. So that's kind of a quicker, faster way to do it, but keep in mind you can also do it the long way by multiplying the whole fraction out first, factoring, and then canceling. Alright. Oh, my tablet's off, that's why it's not working. So let's go ahead and try some examples of this. So the first one we're going to look at is letter A. So as you can see on letter A, it's all monomials. There's no binomials, so there's really no factoring involved. It's more about actually canceling stuff out. So on these questions, I'm going to do it two ways. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do it by canceling first, and then the other way I'm going to show you by multiplying first. These ways both work perfectly fine. So cross-canceling is where you cancel things diagonally first. So, as you can see, I have an x up here, one x, and I have three x's, right? So, if I were to divide these, what would be 3 minus 1? So that means there's two x's left down here. Okay? I can also cross-cancel this way as well. So how many times does 5 go into 10? Twice. So this becomes a 2. I can also cancel these x's as well. So 2 x's down here, 1 x up here. 2 minus 1 is 1, so only 1 x remains down here. Okay. Once you do all of that, you can also cancel up and down. So z to the third divided by z squared is going to be just z1 on the top. So now what you would do is multiply straight across what you have left. Okay. So that's going to be negative 4y, and then we still have a y up top, so y squared, right? I think that's all we have left.
Where did we get the negative 4?
2 times negative 2.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, I canceled this one out. Ah, the z, that's what I was missing. Okay. It's like hard because my pen's so like fat compared to what is written up here. And then I have x to the third on the bottom, right? Everybody good with that? So let's say that way is confusing to you. I sometimes find it confusing when I'm doing things like this too. So here's another way you can do it. Okay? So if that method didn't make a lot of sense, here's the other option. You can just multiply straight across on the top and bottom. So like any fraction, you can multiply the tops together. So what's this going to become? Negative 20x to the good, y to the z to the third, all over 5x to the good, z to the second. Now I'm going to be able to just simplify this particular fraction. So this becomes negative 4, and then you see the x's? This is going to become x to the third right on the bottom because you subtract, right? And then the z's are going to cancel and just leave one z on the bottom, or on the top, sorry. And then the y is going to stay up top. So what do you guys think is easier, the first way or the second way? Okay, we'll stick with that throughout most of it. But yeah, two methods to use. Some are more useful in other situations. Yes?
For the first way, could you cross out top and bottom and then crisscross?
Yes. Yep, the main thing is you can always cancel diagonally and vertically, just never across. Okay? Doesn't matter what order you do it. So before we move on, we have to go back and look at original restrictions. So I forgot to do that in the beginning. What can x not be here? 0, and also z can't be, because that would make the denominator 0. So you always have to find restrictions prior to canceling. Okay, so sorry I forgot to mention that, yeah. Yes, you will. Restrictions are part of it. All right, next one. letter B. So letter B is a little different because this is all factorable, right? So I'm going to factor everything. What is that going to factor into on top?
1 and -5.
Positive 3 and negative 2. Okay, all over x minus 5. Okay. Times, what's this top right here going to factor into? Good. X plus 5 and x minus 5, we call that difference of squares. This bottom right here, what's that going to factor into? X plus 3 and x plus 1. So all we did was we just factored this fraction. This 2 looks kind of weird. I'm just going to rewrite it. So we just factored that fraction, both fractions. Everybody understand what we did there? Okay. So before you do anything else, you're going to find your restrictions by basically setting each one of these equal to 0 and solving. So x cannot be 5, x cannot be or negative 1. You get those by setting the denominators equal to 0 and solving. Okay? So now you have two options. You can either start cross-canceling or you can write it as one big fraction first, whatever you feel more comfortable with. So just like when you multiply fractional numbers, when you multiply fractional rational expressions, it's just multiply the top by the bottom, and it just becomes one big fraction. Now here's the part where we can see what the top and bottom have in common and can be canceled out. So what can we cancel out so far?
X minus 1.
Yep. The x plus 3, and then I think that's it, right? So notice I can only cancel, I canceled the wrong x, didn't I? Or 5? Yeah, there we go. So you can only cancel one of them, and then of course they're different signs anyways. So all we have left is this as my final answer. Now, this is why finding the restrictions prior is so important, okay? You have to find the restrictions before you cancel stuff out, because otherwise you're going to miss some of them. Any questions about that? All right. Let's go ahead and try some more. All right, so these ones right here, okay, sorry, I was just checking something. All right, so let's go ahead and zoom in and take a look at these. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to factor this whole thing. Step 1, factor the whole entire thing, okay? So the top is going to stay as is. What's the bottom going to factor into? Good, x plus 1 and x plus 1 times. Now, here's the thing. Division turns into multiplication, okay? So, when we turn it into multiplication, we have to do what to the second fraction? Flip it. So we flip it and we factor it at the same time. Does everybody see that? So just to be clear, like what happened here, the original top becomes your bottom, and the original bottom becomes your top, but as we flipped it, I also factored it. Now I want you to read through these steps carefully because there's a few things we have to talk about. Factor, numerator, denominator, state the restrictions. Okay, so here's the thing about this. This one has a little bit tricky restrictions, so here's the trick that I always tell everybody. Okay? Here's the rule. Find your restrictions now by finding these ones, of course. So we got x cannot be negative 1, and x can also not be negative 5 or positive 2. But we have one problem with division, okay? Here's the issue. This originally wasn't in the denominator, but this right here was. So I also have to take this into account as well as restrictions. So what else can't x be now? Positive 1. Because it was originally in the denominator. Does everybody see that? Okay, so keep in mind the main rule is when you do division, you have to do restrictions top and bottom. Okay? So whatever fraction you flip, you have to do restrictions on the top and the bottom. Okay? So keep that in mind. Any questions about that? Alright. So, now you have the option of writing this as one big fraction. But, we have something that we can kind of deal with here. Can I cancel these out right here? Well, you can, but you have to do one thing first, right? You have to put in a -1. So I cancel those out, but I have to put in -1. What else can I cancel out?
X plus 1.
The x plus 1. Okay? And that's it. So I'm left with -1 times this all over this. Any questions about that? And that's our final answer. So my main thing is you don't have to write it as all one big fraction before you start canceling stuff out. You can if you want. It's not wrong. It's just an extra step. All right. And letter B. Step 1 is to factor everything. So do we have any questions about the factoring so far? Now, remember, when we go to change it to multiplication, what do we have to do with that second fraction? Flip it. Flip it. And then what can I factor out of this one here? 2x. Before we cancel anything, we have to find the restrictions, right? What can x not be? -4, it can't be 3, it can't be 1, it can't be -1, and it also can't be 0. Where'd the 0 come from? Anyone know? The 2x. Good. So remember, when it's division, you have to do the restrictions on the top and bottom. Because remember, that bottom was that top was originally a bottom. Does that make sense?
I have a question.
Yes.
What would the restriction for the top of the
The top of the what?
Oh, never mind.
So I highlighted them so you can see where they each came from. Does that make more sense now? Alright, so now we can start canceling stuff out. I can cancel these out, right? I can cancel these out. And these as well. Which leaves me with just 2x over x minus 1. Any questions about that? Alright, moving on. Letter C. So this one looks more complicated than it is because this is just what operation? Division. So I'm going to rewrite this fraction, and as I do, I'm just going to factor it, okay? So the top factors into x plus 5 and x minus 2. What's this one right here factor into? X plus 6 and minus 2. This changes to multiplication. And when it does, remember, what do I have to do? Flip it. So my bottom is now my top is now my bottom. So this right here is now the bottom, and what can I factor out of it? 3. And then, lastly, I need to find my restrictions, right? So these are part of the restrictions, and then this whole entire fraction makes restrictions because remember, the top was once the bottom was once the top. So this is can no longer be -6. It can't be a 2, and it also can't be -3. So now I can start canceling stuff out. All I can really cancel out is this right here, right? Anything else? I don't think so. So you can't cancel the x plus 6. Why not? They have to be on the, one's got to be on the top, one's got to be on the bottom, right? And they're both on the bottom. How can I rewrite this so I don't have to write x plus 6 twice? Squared. And that's it. I'll go ahead and hand out your homework. Hopefully it wasn't too difficult. You want to hand them out? Thanks.